It is an extraordinary anniversary, and there's just so much going on in so many different areas relative to this. On the line with us is Medea Benjamin, the co-founder of Code Pink and Global Exchange. Her latest book, Kingdom of the Unjust, Behind the U.S.-Saudi Connection. CodePink.org, of course, the website, globalexchange.org, and you can tweet her at Medea Benjamin. Medea, welcome back to the program. I'm sorry?
I said nice to be on with you.
Oh, great, thank you. You just came out with, Code Pink just came out with a 39-page report titled War Profiteers, the U.S. War Machine and the Arming of Repressive Regimes. Given that this is the 9/11 anniversary, could we start out with the connection between the Saudis and 9/11 and the American response to 9/11 and how it has changed our relationship with Saudi Arabia and our relationship with the Middle East in the, 17 years since then?
Yes, well, as your listeners might recall, 15 of the 19 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. There was a very large group of Saudis who were whisked away out of the United States back to Saudi Arabia before commercial planes were even flying after 9/11 attacks. Then despite the fact that the Saudis have been the perpetrators of this Wahhabist ideology, the U.S. has maintained a very close relationship with Saudi Arabia. The Obama administration had a very close relationship, selling over $100 billion in weapons to the Saudis. And then, of course, Trump came in and made that embrace even a more tightly knit one. And when the Trump administration announced its Muslim ban, it did not include Saudi Arabia, but included countries like Iran that had nothing to do with 9/11. So this insidious relationship the U.S. has with Saudi Arabia is an important one to recall on 9/11 and to understand that it's all about oil, profits, weapons sales, money, money, money.
Yeah, it certainly seems so. And we got a lot of misinformation about 9/11. One of the most important, I think, was when Cindy Sheehan testified before Congress, before John Conyers' committee back in the day. And she had learned, and I guess we all had learned, it was not a secret, that before he was even running for president in 1999, when George Bush's family had hired Mickey Herskowitz to write, or ghostwrite, George W. Bush's autobiography, A Charge to Keep, Mickey Herskowitz had recorded about 100 hours of tape, and this is what Cindy Sheehan had to tell us about what we learned from that. And it's on the 360, Sean. No, it's, okay, let's see.
As a matter of fact, in interviews in 1999 with respected journalists and longtime Bush family friend Mickey Herskowitz, then Governor George Bush stated, "One of the keys to being seen as a great leader is to be seen as commander-in-chief. My father had all this political capital built up when he drove the Iraqis out of Kuwait, and he wasted it. If I have a chance to invade, if I had that much capital, I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to get everything passed that I want to get passed, and I'm going to have a successful presidency," end quote.
So here we have 2 years before 9/11, George W. Bush saying if he has an excuse to invade Iraq, he's going to do it. Did Iraq have anything at all to do with 9/11?
Well, Iraq had nothing at all to do with 9/11. It was a desire by the Project for New American Centuries and the neocons to invade Iraq. This was a perfect excuse for it. And as we say in this report that we just put out, it's a tragic irony that 9/11 was really a boost to the weapons industry as well. So it was an invasion predetermined, preordained, and 9/11 was really the opening for such an invasion, with the disastrous results that we should really contemplate today when we think about where did 9/11 lead us, with the U.S. still involved in Afghanistan after, well, now almost 17 years. But what has happened? Oh, and Afghanistan, we should know that even now the Taliban controls large swaths of Afghanistan, so certainly no wins there. And in Iraq, the terrible devastation that continues to be inflicted on the people of Iraq with an unstable government, with not only Al-Qaeda growing, but ISIS and the spread of ISIS throughout the region. So it is important to remember today that 9/11 was an excuse for the invasion of Iraq that has had such horrific consequences for the entire region.
We're talking to Medea Benjamin. Her book, Kingdom of the Unjust, is absolute must-reading about Saudi Arabia. And Code Pink, which she co-founded, just put out this new 39-page report, War Profiteers, the U.S. War Machine. Medea, before we get to that, and I do want to get to that, before we do that, I'm curious your thoughts on what we should be most vigilant about if there was another 9/11 style attack or disaster, not necessarily the same form, airplanes hitting towers, but something that kills thousands of Americans in the name of a terrorist organization, with Donald Trump in office. What would you anticipate he might do and that we should be concerned about?
Well, certainly it would lead to a tremendous crackdown on our free speech rights, which we're already seeing in state after state, where they're implementing these terrible penalties for people who are activists, like environmental activists. We see this kind of backlash against people who are working around the Israel-Palestine issue. So say goodbye to the free speech rights we have left, to the ability to choose places where we want to protest, because it will be protest pens. I would say rounding up of people who are dissenters. And then in terms of what it would mean for another excuse to invade abroad, I would think they would find a way to blame it on Iran, because we really are in a situation now where the Trump administration could use another war to distract from the domestic woes. And they have been focusing on Iran as the greatest state sponsor of terror, the greatest threat to the United States and the region. So I think some kind of attack would somehow be blamed on Iran and would be an excuse to start a war there.
Yeah, remarkable. Medea, tell us the main conclusions from this new report that Code Pink just put out.
So the report looks at the top 5 weapons manufacturers, which are Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, General Dynamics, and Boeing, and looks at how much of our tax dollars, in the case of the, quote, giveaway of weapons to countries like Israel and Egypt, and the sale of weapons in the case of Saudi Arabia, and what this has meant for the bottom line of the weapons industry. We took heart at the fact that one of the rare times that the mainstream media talked about who manufactures these weapons was on August 9th, after the horrendous attack in Yemen by a Saudi bombing of a school bus that left 40 children dead. And CNN put out a graphic that showed that the weapons came from Lockheed Martin, but they also put out a graphic that showed other killings of large numbers of civilians in Yemen and traced them to the weapons with, for example, Raytheon and General Dynamics. And we thought that was a very rare but good example, and we have to educate Americans that these weapons that are killing civilians, whether it's the ones being used by the Israelis to shoot down peaceful protesters in Gaza, or the ones that the Egyptians are using to gun down dissidents like they did in Rabat Square after the military coup, or the ones that the Saudis are using against the people of Yemen, these have an origin, and their origin are U.S. companies. And these companies are considered great patriotic companies, and their CEOs are asked to speak at big gatherings to show their civic duties and how they are such great citizens, like the woman who has broken the glass ceiling in the weapons industry, the CEO of Lockheed Martin, Marilyn Houston, who is a mother and prides herself on all the things she does for children in the community. And we want to point out that the $20 million plus that she is making every year has blood on it, unlike the black ink in the bottom line for the profits of the company, and how these companies' profits have skyrocketed thanks to the endless war. With the case of Lockheed Martin, for example, going from 31 billion to 41 billion to 51 billion last year, and how this is that we have to do what the Pope has done, which is call these companies merchants of death, to not remain silent in the face of how they are making their profits. And we attach it to a campaign called Divest from the War Machine, where we ask people to join us in doing just what the environmentalists have been doing, which is taking money out of the fossil fuel industry. We have to take our money out of the weapons industry.
Yeah, very well said. People can find the report, I'm assuming, at codepink.org.
That's right.
Okay. Medea Benjamin, check out her book, Kingdom of the Unjust. Codepink.org is the website. And, of course, you can tweet her at Medea Benjamin. It's 18 minutes past the hour. Thank you, Medea.
Thanks for having me on, Tom.
Always great talking with you.